I'm Em,
And I'm Lex.
and we're thrilled to welcome you to the Ready, Set, Coach podcast.
Now, we're not just your hosts. We're also mamas, entrepreneurs, coaches, friends, and co-founders of the Ready, Set, Coach community.
What began as a pandemic side hustle has blossomed into a vibrant online community crafted by coaches for coaches.
So when we're not immersed in our coaching community on Circle, we're busy managing our other businesses, navigating the ups and downs of life, and of course, recording this podcast.
This is where we dive deep into epic conversations about life, business, coaching,
and everything in between.
So are you ready, Lex?
I'm set, Em.
Let's coach.
Hello, Lexi Smith. Wow.
Hello. Oh, I just realized we're both wearing gray sweatshirts today.
Wow.
So
This,
cute.
I think if I could wear like sweatshirts professionally, wait, I wear sweatshirts professionally.
I was going to say, don't we?
Don't we? No, I love sweatshirts. I don't know what it is about the thickness of a sweatshirt that really does it for me. Like a long sleeve can't do what a sweatshirt does.
Well, no, and it's loose and cozy and easy, breezy, beautiful, cover girl.
I think cozy is like my favorite feeling. Every single morning I take Jackson up and I go, "Do you want to cuddle and be cozy?" And he's like, "Screw you, mom. Bye." But I love cozy, the like feeling of cozy. And like, did you ever make little forts when you were little that you could hide in?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, they were cozy.
Coziness. Yeah, and we're both from colder climates originally, or like climates that had cold seasons. So,
Yeah.
whereas I live in California now, and that's not as much a thing, but being from Oregon in the Pacific Northwest, I grew up in like beanies and warm coats and blankies and hot chocolate and fires.
Hot chocolate is such a trigger word. Like not trigger, like a good trigger word for me in terms of like I see a hot chocolate on a menu and I must order it.
And now I say, can I add schnapps?
I know. And
Or
more
Bailey.
whipped cream too,
Yeah.
because it like adds out the math of the calories there. Okay, but I wanted to ask you, Lex, were you the one who told me about the Discovery of Witches?
Yes,
I just started reading it.
you did. Oh my
I
God, that
did.
took 2 years.
I know. I'm sorry. You told me A Court of Thorn and Roses.
That's
And I
true.
did Fourth Wing, like, there was other books, but I just started reading it. I'm very, very rudimentary into it. I'm in like chapter 2.
Oh, you need to keep going. If
Okay.
I recall, it was a slower burn to start, maybe, but it's
And then
really
it put a spell on
good.
you.
Huh?
And then
Then
it
it
put a
puts a
spell
spell
on
on
you.
you? It's good. I'm excited. Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah. Okay. I was reading it and I was like, wait, before I like get too far in, let me double check this is A, the right book. B,
Yes.
I have someone I can talk about the book with. And I don't know if you've noticed that, like books are just that much more fun now when you have someone else to discuss the twists and turns with versus finishing it and then you can't uncover. You haven't finished the second Fourth Wing, right?
No, but I'm making a lot further progress. Like I'm almost halfway through, which for me usually it would take a month to get this far because
Oh,
I'm just so well, I've
invested.
also been sick and like prioritizing like going to bed early, but then so I'm like in bed at 8 and then I read for anyways.
2
What I
hours.
was quick scroll. I listen to true crime podcasts. We all know this, and I consistently think about, what would be a podcast that's fun, that's not business related, that could become a career. I'm just saying, Emily, if you guys want us to start like a fiction reading book podcast, book club with Em and Lex, I don't know, maybe that, and then we can go on tour one day. I'm just
Oh my
creating our next
God.
version of our life for us.
Oh, I love that. You need to be a faster reader though, not to like totally.
Yeah, but if it was my job, that's
That's
different.
fair. That's fair. And then we could bring on the authors and we could interview them.
Ooh, so good.
And we could put events together focused on the book.
So guys, like if you want us to do this, like, it'd be so hard for us, but like let us know.
We're like, and sorry, business is closed. We're shuttering.
Ready, set,
Read.
Kotar. Yeah, ready, set,
Yeah.
read.
Ready,
It really
set,
works for
read.
everything.
We
But
have that
like
in the community. Ready, set, read.
we had it with our first iteration, but
Oh yeah.
yeah. But okay,
Oh, we still
so
have. Okay.
talking about like the next iteration of our life brings me to
There we go.
the topic of business and thinking about your next iteration of your business. And when you go to scale your business, grow your business, Usually, you don't do that alone. So, today we're talking about building and scaling your coaching team.
Dun, dun, dun. But Lex, you're a coach and you're a business of one and the brand's all about your name. Why would you hire someone if it's all about you?
Because you can't do all the things, Emily.
I think that's probably the number one objection I've heard people say. Being like, well, it's not so much. I mean, I'm only I'm one person, but I don't have products or I don't have things that I need to ship off and everything's virtual. So like I don't need to hire someone.
Name one, I'll say, 7-figure business owner who does it in a silo and has not a single member on their team. Name one. I'll wait.
Mm, 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 mm. I don't know.
You can't.
I don't know. Oprah, she does it all by herself.
She does it all by herself.
Just like
Elon
she
Musk, all
loses
by himself. Sarah Blakely, all by herself.
Did you know that? Yeah. I mean, like Weight Watchers, she lost all the weight all by herself.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Okay, so Emily, let's start here. What's a trigger? What's an indication that it might be time for you to make your first hire?
A good indicator of when it's time to make your first hire is that feeling of immense overwhelm, where you are feeling pulled in multiple directions at the same time and balls are being dropped.
Could not agree more. I think another indication is when you start feeling or literally saying, I don't have time.
Exactly. But you do have time for Wordle connections, crossword puzzles.
I did Wordle for a solid month and then I'm no longer doing it.
Lexi, I made it to 320 days as a streak and I messed up.
So you
I'm
failed life.
I'm on day 10 again. It's like the most depressing thing.
That's like getting your chip, your sobriety chip. And then
Yeah,
you
I fell off the wagon and I didn't miss it. I messed up and it was the stupidest work. Anyways,
you're only human, Emily. Okay,
ah,
so if you're getting overwhelmed,
with
maybe
Wordle.
business is doing really well, right? You're
Yeah.
getting more clients, and now all of a sudden you don't feel like you have as much time in the day to do all the things. And now you're feeling like, oh, maybe there's actually a little bit of capital to support a hire. So if you're at the point where you want to make your first hire, what should a coach's first hire be?
Typically, I think the first hire, and this could be controversial and you might feel differently, I think it's doing the admin things. So, like a virtual assistant of some capacity, building your social media. And when I say building your social media, I mean like creating any Canva graphics that you have. I found the admin tasks were the things that slipped through my fingers the most. Like I would promise to send recaps after an event, and that became the bottom of the barrel. So like someone who can take the easy lifts off of your plate that aren't necessarily really thought-provokingly challenging, but feel very tedious on your work plate.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'd say it's a toss up for me. Some people might already go into business with a bookkeeper, but that was one of my first hires is getting a bookkeeper. And then it was a VA. And that's a common term, a virtual assistant in the coaching world. In terms of what that virtual assistant does, I do think that really can depend on you and what you're good at, what you like doing, what you don't like doing, what type of coach you are, what type of programs you're running. For someone like me who loves making Canva graphics, that's not something I immediately outsourced. Something that I outsourced more was some of the back end kind of systems building, tracking. I had them help me with kind of production of things. So to your point, like sitting down and figuring out what are the time consuming tasks that should I get off my plate will allow me or will open up space in another area, likely to service clients or to find new business.
I would even challenge you to go a step further and write down all of your tasks because so many times we forget all the little things that we do from uploading a podcast or even posting on Instagram, or maybe you send the same email over and over and over to people. And I noticed myself doing that too. I'm like, I literally should have just templatized this 2 years ago and still haven't. So writing down every single little task and kind of auditing, giving yourself a week to do it, and then circling the ones that you would be okay letting go of, and also would be an easy thing to delegate and to explain to a person that is not you. And so in that thinking too, it's like there are some, and then starting the ones that like need to be done by you. So for example, being a guest on a podcast, you are the guest on the podcast, like you need to be doing that one. Coaching your clients at this point in time, if you were the coach that is selling the program, that is saying that you are coaching the program, that is you. So just kind of creating categories of like, this needs to be done by me, and this is something that could be done by someone else.
Perfect. Okay. So you've figured out there's, a core set of 10 tasks that would be phenomenal to get off your plate. And you want to try this whole VA thing or assistant thing. What do you do? Where do you go? What do you need to know to make that first hire?
I think first knowing your budget, knowing how much are you willing to spend on this person, and do you want to hire someone in America? Do you want to marry? Do you want to marry someone? Do you want to outsource your marriage? Do you want to hire someone across seas? So, for example, like an American hire could be $20-25 an hour versus someone in the Philippines could be anywhere from $5 to $10 an hour. So I think knowing what's a priority for you there, and then also knowing, do you want them to be, do you want them to deliver things at like a certain time? Do you want them to be available online on certain dates? Do you want them to, do you want them to speak English and like be forward facing on camera with clients? Things like that, like kind of those parameters.
The one thing too, guys, to know, and when you're thinking about your first hire, you need to kind of decide if you want to do it more of as a contractor, or if you want to bring someone on as an employee, as a W-2. Bringing on your first W-2 has a lot more strings attached, and we could talk about that. But typically, you would hire a VA as a contractor or a 1099 based on where they live. That's also going to dictate the paperwork you need. It's going to dictate your contract. One of my PR assistants, she's nomadic, and right now she lives in Puerto Rico, and I've been paying her through Gusto, and Gusto just yelled at us that we're not allowed to have contractors from Puerto Rico, so we just had to offboard her, and now we're reconfiguring her contract and invoicing. So you also need to figure out, those kind of back end things, but generally speaking, if you're going to hire a contractor who has some level of experience, they should have that set up. So this is how you pay me. This is when you pay me. So again, I also learned this is a big one. I learned, I think it can be really attractive to go overseas. And I think depending on the task and the individual overseas, that can work out. However, I've also gotten what I've paid for.
Yeah.
100%. So I know my gal, she lives in Puerto Rico, but she's from New York. She's American, and she costs more than the first set of VAs I hired, but she's worth it.
Yeah.
Tenfold.
It's funny. My first VA I found through a program called Byron. Hi, Byron. And so they matched you, and I had a contract that I could pay credit card, and I'd pay Byron, and then Byron would pay it to the assistant. And so I think my first contract was like 20 hours a month with this particular person. Fun fact, Lexi, and this is, we'll go into the learning parts and like best practice parts, but I never, in our like 2 years of working together with her, I never got on a Zoom with her once or heard her voice.
Hey everyone, Lex here.
And Em.
And if you haven't heard, we did something pretty darn cool.
We sure did. We launched a completely free community built specifically for coaches.
Say it again for the people in the back.
We launched a free community for coaches. Tell them quickly who it's for and what we're doing inside, Lex.
Sure thing. So it's for anyone from the coaching curious to side hustlers to coaches ready to scale. And through the virtual platform that we've built, we've created a safe and fun space to learn, launch, grow, connect, ideate, collaborate, vent, and evolve together.
Nailed it, Lex. Now, while it's free, you must apply in order to gain a free membership. So we can make sure everyone inside is awesome, like us.
Apply today at readysetcoachcommunity.com. So that is, I'm going to say, a mistake to avoid 101.
Yes. It was also, she was based in the States, but I felt like every time she would message me, we would be on Slack together, and she'd be like, sorry, my brother just overdosed, and like we're picking up his body at the morgue. And I was like, oh my God. So it got a little, it's hard sometimes when you're managing someone and you're paying hourly and you're like, oh my God, I have compassion, but I also have my tasks that need to be done. And we can talk about the VAs.
Management, the VA. And something too, guys, to know, contractor versus W2 meaning in-house. You can't actually legally dictate the hours of a contractor 1099, meaning you can have a handshake deal with them. Like, I'd love for you to be online from like 9 to 10, but if that becomes a requirement, now they have to become an in-person hire. So there are some intricacies to be aware of and to be mindful of. These are all things that we highly suggest you pan out in the interview process. So I'm a big believer in hire slow.
Why do you say that, Lexi? I'm so curious.
Oh gosh, I've seen so many fail. I mean, even before entrepreneurship, I was involved in hiring in the companies, just being in management. And it can be really easy to feel like you're in a dire situation where you need someone now, and the first good candidate that walks through the door, you bet all your eggs on. But betting all your eggs that fast without properly vetting can lead to a lot more of a headache down the road.
Yeah.
Holy moly, ravioli.
Yeah. And I think both of us have had the experience of hiring assistants in some capacity that have just completely missed the mark and have disappointed in terms of their time management, their life management, expectation management, quit before they've started, all the fun little experiences of life. But going back to finding them, so you can find them through different systems, like I mentioned Byron, or there's kind of like wrangler groups of VA organizations. So if you typed in like VA and what your needs are, you could probably be matched to something. There's also incredible Facebook groups where you can post your VA needs and then get pitched like a few interviews that way.
Yep. Honestly, go into the Ready Set Coach community. We have a In Search Of channel. That's a whole community of coaches who probably have VAs you can ask, because referrals can be really powerful. So my current VA, I did a job posting. It was part-time contract, and I put it out onto Indeed, and circulated it as a like legitimate job post, which was great. And that's how she found me. You can go through your university. It just, again, depends on if you're looking for someone that's part of a VA agency, or you're just looking for a candidate who's interested in being an assistant and they happen to be virtual or not. You can also hire someone locally. I have a client who has a local assistant, so it's legitimately assistant.
Yeah.
Coach.
My mom keeps pushing back and being like, well, I want someone local. I want someone who can like help me. I have so many things printed out. I'm like, what? Like, why are you printing everything out? That could be emailed. That could be faxed. Or she said the word fax the other day. They could be emailed. So yeah, I think that's a good question. So then in terms of managements and like training a VA, Lex, do you have any best practices that you've
I'm going to share 3 of my things that are like non-negotiables now that I wish I had done. First and foremost, get on a gosh dang, like over communicate that first 1, 2, 3 weeks. Over communicate, get on Zooms, make sure you guys are not just communicating via email or Slack. It's so easy to cross haywires. While you're doing that, my second piece of advice is have them document everything. Every piece of training, because likely if this is your first hire, you don't have that. Have them document when you're teaching them how to post on your Instagram. Have them write out the steps. These are going to become your first set of SOPs that should that hire leave by way of choice or by way of your choice, now your next hire, training them is going to be so much more efficient because you have that process documented. And then third, while you're over communicating and documenting processes, I think it's so, so, so clear to have very set expectations. Now, as I mentioned, legally there's some things you can and can't do with a contractor, but making your hire know what you expect and by when is key. So, hey, I expect these 3 items by Friday. Like
Yeah.
getting deadlines clear, over communicating, having it written somewhere, so that everyone's on the same page, huge.
I'll add to that in terms of SOPs, adding there's different ways that people learn and retain information. So I always love a step-by-step guide for the individual, but I also create a loom, like this is
Yeah.
why we do it this way, and this is me doing it so you can see what it looks like. So then there's 2 options for them. And then if they have any questions, it really they have exhausted trying it on their own.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
can I also add, Lex, in terms of communication? And I really screwed the hoot. Did you say screwed the hoot?
Pooch, it's the
Is that
pooch.
the pooch? I'm like, I was the pooch,
Screwed the
hooch,
pooch.
screwed the pooch, which sounds really dirty,
Yeah,
actually.
it probably is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anywho, I feel like I really messed up at that point in my time with the early VAs, in that we would email, we would Slack, we would Trello, and we were kind of like this hot mess express where my VA wasn't anticipating hearing from me in one particular place. And I've since solved that with my VAs now, where I only communicate them via Slack. And so like Slack is our home base for communication. If I have sent them an email, I will Slack them and say, hey, I sent you an email about this. Can you please respond to it? So then everything is there and everything is communicated that way, versus like, hey, I added things to your Trello board. So they know to go to Trello, versus feeling like they have to check all of the platforms for secret messages from me.
Yeah, I think that's really key. We do that too for live communication. We have ClickUp and automations and set procedures. That comes a little bit later in business. What I also just do want to talk about, because guys, this is something I went through a little over 2 years ago now. If you do decide that your first hire is something you want to do as a W-2 in-house, I did learn some things in this process. First and foremost, you need employee insurance. So you need to pay for
Yay.
workers' comp. So call your insurance person and get that scope. That's just something you have to do. Also, depending on where they live, there's going to be different taxes and paperwork. So my first in-house hire, my first W-2 at the time, lived in Washington, D.C. Well, Washington, D.C. requires different taxes and different paperwork, and me registering with them, even though I'm a California-based business. So it's something to be mindful of. And overseas, I haven't done a W-2 overseas yet, but I imagine that'd be even more complicated. So consult professionals. It's easier to quote unquote wing hiring contractors when it comes to W-2s, getting an official payroll, Gusto, and making sure all the
Yeah.
regulations are up to date, all that kind of fun stuff. Also, payroll taxes and understanding that if you set someone's salary at, I'm just going to pick an even number, 100,000, that you're going to be paying them more than 100,000 after taxes. That was something also I didn't understand. Like, oh, I want to pay this person this salary. Oh, wait, after taxes, I'm actually going to be paying them this much, even though they're only taking home this much. It just gets a little bit more intricate. So definitely consult with a professional.
Start a business, they say. It's so fun, they say.
I know. Oh, the Canadian, and you just came out.
Oh yeah, I did. It cracks me up. Yeah, well, there's so many tangents, so I will refrain from going on. But I think that is a really, really good point, Lex, too. Like there's different ways. And I think don't don't rush into it. Don't hire someone because you feel obligated to hire someone. I think a contract employee is a great way to both offer yourself autonomy in the relationship, make it easier to sever if you choose to sever it, and also in this generation, I feel like a lot of the VAs and the people that I've met and worked with, they work with multiple people. Like you're not their everything. It's like a polyamorous business world out there, and so just locking them in for your needs isn't necessary in this day and age.
Yeah, I think it definitely um depends at what point you're scaling too. So
Right.
let's talk a little bit about, okay, so we have our VA, like what might our next hire be? And one theme I want to bring up here is generalists versus specialists.
Mhm.
So something I've noticed usually early on, there's two routes you can go. If you identify like clearly everything you need is social media based, then maybe you hire a specialist off the get-go, like someone who specializes in that. If you really need a little bit of help in everything, it's could be a generalist. As you scale, you usually find more needs for specialists. So if you have your general VA who's helping you with general admin, and you decide, for example, okay, now I really do want to more help with social media. Now your next hire might be a specialist, and that specialist can be a lot of different things. It can be a consultant, it can be another VA, it can be an agency, although that's going to be significantly more expensive. But we're getting a little bit more
Yeah,
categorically specific as we scale.
I think that's a really good point. I'm trying to reflect back on my journey. Everything feels kind of muddled at this point in time. I think the bookkeeper and the accountant were like definitely, to your point, one of my very first hires. But then in terms of virtual assistant, and then I would say, I don't know. I was gonna say marketing agency, I think was my big next hire personally, but I also brokered a really like sweet deal that worked for my budget.
Yeah, but to the point, specialist,
I
right?
was a specialist, and what
Yeah.
I needed at that point in my life was I needed that naggy mom to kind of, like, clean my house and tell me how to get the nooks and crannies, and so, like, they really set me up in terms of, getting on a cadence with writing emails and sending emails and, like, revamping some of my branding and revamping kind of, like, the love I felt for my business, and I needed that outside support, and I think I did it for God, I did it for a year and a half, and then I felt strong enough to do it on my own.
Another common hire for coaches is what we would call kind of like the step above a VA, which is an OBM, an online
Yeah,
business manager. An online business manager is a really common hire for a coach that's starting to do well. And I like to think of them kind of like as an operations manager. So
yeah.
someone who you're going to pay more for them than a VA, because they just have more experience and they're really going to take on yeah, an operations manager role, which from the coaching perspective, when you start to think about the things you can outsource, that's one thing that as you scale more, definitely can be baked into a team.
And I like that you put the name to it because I feel like I've had OBMs to an extent in my business, but they were I think I called it like I made up a title for them, or they came in some capacity. But yes, an OBM is so hot right now in terms of like
Mhm.
what you've seen in the world. There's even if you're someone maybe you're listening to this and you are a virtual assistant and you're like, ooh, I want to like up level my virtual assistant's life. I know there's like OBM certifications out there and different programs. Um, but yeah, they're kind of like a project manager and a virtual assistant had a baby.
Yeah. Yep. I've also seen what are some other common hires we've seen for coaches as they scale?
Sales closers. And I think that's an interesting one. And we've talked about that in other episodes. I think it depends on you, your personality, if this is something that you want. But yeah, a sales closer would be someone that comes in and when a lead is hot, they get on the call, they close it, and then tee up Lexi to be the coach.
Yeah, the like sales closer, business development arm,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's very common. I'll just put marketing as another common one. The
PR.
other one that I've seen, and I experienced it the first time I purchased a group program. Um, the coach I hired as my business coach hired other coaches to help us with other areas. So she specifically had hired a life coach to help deal with the therapy side of coaching because
Interesting.
that wasn't her cup of tea. And she let us know. She goes, I'm a business coach. This is my zone of genius. I'm going to show up and I'm going to mentor you. And here is I don't remember her name. Here is Callie, who's on my
Yeah.
team, and she's a certified life coach. And she's who you're going to go to for all the imposter syndrome and stuff that's coming up. I actually thought it was really brilliant because that is so much,
Yeah.
like so much mindset stuff comes up in the coaching process. So for her to be able to focus on scaling and delivering what she did best, that was her hire.
Oh my God, Lexi, we should hire one of those.
No, right?
For
So that's
ourselves.
another thing, like different collaborations. Like if you're, a career coach, maybe who specializes in helping people determine what
Yeah.
their next course of action is. Is there a hire where you bring in an executive coach because that could be another level or layer of your business? That might not be the best example but maybe the business and life coach is the best example, but you can
Yeah.
hire other coaches to help facilitate other arms of your business.
I mean, we completely are laughing. I'm laughing at myself because we didn't see this at the forefront. Probably the first hire of a coach is a coach.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so
Who's
that
there
goes
there?
without being said in terms of like helping support and also vet and navigate as you bring on these hires, like having another sounding board to be it a coach, be it a group program, be it something, it's some sort of container to make sure you're not doing this alone. I want to also add, Lex, in terms of additional hires. Oh my God, now my brain just like completely went. Oh, podcast person.
If you
If
end
you,
up
yeah.
launching a podcast, and that I would say like falls in the marketing, depending on how you evolve your business. If like you go heavy on social and maybe you hire a social team. If you have a podcast, you
Yeah.
hire a podcasting team. If you decide you really want to go heavy on writing, maybe you hire a copywriter. Copywriter is another one kind of
Oh
across the
yeah.
board too. Yeah.
Yeah, web designer, copywriter, basically having a coaching business. What we're trying to say here isn't so far off than having a product-based business. You're just the product, and there are some aspects of the product that need to be refined, and it can be hard to refine when you are your own product. And what do you think, Lex?
I think that yes, I agree with the second half. I think it's a very different hiring journey than a product-based business.
Well,
But
yes. I mean, you're not
that's
like
where if you saw me
Amazon
go,
and stuff. Yeah, her face was tweaking out. But I wanted to say, what was the last thing I was gonna say? Everything
you
just,
can't do it like you don't operate in a silo.
yeah, you don't operate
Yeah.
in a silo. You need support. The goal is to expand. The goal is to not necessarily, you don't have to be the only chef cooking up the things. You can have a team. You can have people. I mean, we've seen coaches that have had like CFOs. Seen coaches that
That's true.
have, yeah, right, CMOs like have grown and scaled in such a capacity that they have other people operating more of the bigger components.
Yeah, and actually a member of our own community, I'll give her a shout out, Jess Wass, was getting to a point in her business where she needed to hire, she's a career coach. She needed to hire more career coaches to service all the business that was coming to her on the corporate side. And she found Ashley Rudolph in our community, and now they're working together, which is
That makes me
amazing.
so
Yeah,
happy.
yeah. So there's lots of hires to make. One thing I do want to note, this is just, I think this is transferable across any industry. Be wary or be mindful of how many hires you collect. The more
Yes.
people you hire, the more you have to manage. And all of a sudden, you might realize that your job is more management than anything else. Um, a true when I was a true CEO or a true COO is really just people managing all day. Now, coaching, if you want to make sure you still have time to coach, just be mindful that if you're going to keep growing your team, then I think
Mhm.
that director of ops or having someone to buffer you
Yeah.
is really important.
Yeah, I think that is a really, 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 really good thing. And it could be really easy for you to see a problem, want to hire out, see a problem, want to hire it out without giving yourself the time or the space to see if you could fix the problem without.
That doesn't always solve you time. You're just now
Yeah.
going to be spending your time hiring and training and managing and hoping they don't quit before you have to go through it again. So hiring isn't always the answer to saving time.
Amen to that. So Lexi, what's the homework then with this?
I think the homework will differ based on where you're at in your business. But I think it's just, think about it. If you were going to make a hire right now, what would your next hire be? What questions do you have? What actually, and that's your homework. Send us any questions you have. Post them in the community. Like, let this community of coaches
Mhm.
be a resource for you. For people like Em and I have a team of 6. Like, there's someone in the community, I'm sure, who has a larger team than that. Like, let this community guide you and support you, and you don't have to do this alone.
Amen, sister. Join our church, join our cult.
I like cult better. I'm more of a cult girl.
Yeah, cult. It's our dream, guys. We want to be cult leaders one day. So here we are. Join it.
Here we are. The Ready, Set,
Set
Coach
Coach
Cult podcast.
podcast. Oh man.
Okay, bye.
If you're enjoying the Ready, Set, Coach podcast, please leave a review wherever you are listening. For more information about Ready, Set, Coach, visit readysetcoachprogram.com.